Hi, I'm Justin B. McBride. This is my Jeep Gladiator Winston, and above us here is the Epic Chro-Moly system. Now, a little backstory, I had recently purchased the JCR overhead Moly panel when my friends at Epic, who make the Epic Kraken, which is below the seat directly in front of you, they reached out and they said, hey, we got something new coming out. Would you like to put it in your Jeep? And for a hot minute there, I was saying, nah, because I'm going to sell my Jeep. I just bought a rack. I think it'll work, blah, blah, blah. And they basically sent me a list of claims. And their claims are, hey, Justin, this thing has the highest vertical clearance of any overhead rack on the market. Okay, I just bought one. Let's see. And it's made from special aluminum alloy that is resistant to uncomfortable thermal radiation that occurs when excessive heat is trapped inside the cabin of the Jeep compared to steel. A little bit of a word vomit, but I assume what they're really trying to say is doesn't get as hot as the rack you just bought, Justin. And then it says it has a unique Moly grid array with inclusion of 1/4-inch slots throughout for all your devices and gear mounts, 67 designs, bullet point, or other. And then they did a sub-bullet point here, and this is a big claim. You can literally mount anything to the Chro in any configuration while maintaining the maximum vertical clearance. Anything. I don't know if I can test that. What am I going to put up there? My baby? I'm not. I thought about it. I did. I was like, I'll set my baby up there, but that's mean. No one, come on. Be a better dad, Justin. All right, and then their last bullet point is that it's compatible with every Jeep top, soft top, hard top, one-touch power top, best top, Sunrider. And I can't test that, but I do know that one's true because really most Jeeps are universal, so there's going to be small differences in where the whole locations need to be or what mounts are on there. But overall, like when you buy a Jeep from Jeep, this B-pillar is basically the same. So that one's kind of obvious. There are a few differences between this one and the ones that you would get if you had a different like soft top or other things, and that would be that these gaps are filled in. But other than that, I think we're going to test some of those claims with the JCR rack that I have. And I mean, let's jump to a conclusion. This is what is installed in the Jeep. So maybe they were right. All right, so let's jump to the install and then we'll wrap it up here after all of that for a final review. While this tool list looks extensive, some of the ones I'm showing are mostly optional. That said, for the full list and links to these tools, hit the very first link in this video's description that leads to my blog post about this install. Starting off, you'll need a set of metric Allen keys. The 2.5mm, the 3mm, and the 4mm will likely be used depending on how you install your Chro. Next, you'll need a T40 Torx bit, a T25 Torx bit, a 10mm socket, and a 7mm socket. Because you will be drilling and not using the double tape method that can rattle and ruin the paint on your windshield, you'll need either a step bit that can go up to a 1/4 inch or a 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch bit. The Milwaukee set is so good and makes drilling through metal painless. Find it in that blog post that is linked in the description as well. Next, a ratcheting box wrench set is a must with at least a 10mm. Then you'll need the ratchets to match with your sockets that we talked about earlier. You'll need at least a 1/4 inch drive for that 7mm socket and a 3/8 inch drive for the T40 bit. I mean, you probably already never leave home without this, but you'll find a Leatherman handy. I'm still loving my Leatherman Arc. Trim tools, I swear, if you don't have any yet, what is even in your toolbox? This set that I used was only like $10 on Amazon, and I swear I reach for at least one of them during every project. The same goes for a big, fat, flathead screwdriver. I don't use this to remove any of the trim, that's why I have trim tools, but I do use it to repair the metal fangs on the clips found in the trim. When the time comes to drill into your Jeep, you will need a punch. Mine is one of the dumb ones that needs a hammer. The one I linked in my blog post is much better. Buy that one instead. For the wiring, you will need a set of wire strippers. This is an auto adjusting one that I've enjoyed using, and it also has a crimper for the butt connectors. To shrink the heat shrink of the butt connectors, you will need a torch or heat gun. My dad has my heat gun right now, so I used a torch. A heat gun is a much better option for all of these tight spaces. That way you don't, burn your Jeep down. You'll find a use for needle nose pliers. I'm sure of it, so have a set handy. And tiny snips. You can use these for the zip ties, but we have a better tool for that I keep talking about and will talk about in just a second. And because the harness from Epic is decently fat, I use these chunky wire cutters to get an easy, clean cut, and that way I don't end up with weird ends on anything. All right, the very last item isn't actually a tool, but a need nonetheless. It is automotive insulating electrical tape, or basically loom tape. This will give you a fit and finish like it is OE. I love this stuff, and so do the guys at Epic. Here it is, the tool I love to pull out for projects like this, my zip tie tool. This funky looking tool will not only prevent you from creating murderous zip tie daggers, it will tighten your zip ties further than you can. Here's a short demonstration on a screwdriver. You can see the zip tie is kind of loose, and I can tighten it just a little bit further with just using my hand, but not all the way down. To get this zip tie rock solid, I slip the zip tie into the opening, and with the two main grips, tighten the zip tie as far as it will go. Then I reset and tighten it one last time, just a little extra snug. And as I do so, I pull the snip handle and cut a flush, non-life-threatening finish to the zip tie. Seriously, if you work on your Jeep regularly, you will want this. All right, enough about tools. Let's start this install. I mean, that's why you're here. To begin, work on a bench with the Crow face down, so you have easy access to the top. In this position, figure out the layout that fits your needs. You can add other accessories at this time too. I opted to add a second Baja Designs dome light that has a yellow filter. I recommend doing the same because, well, these lights are worth twice their weight in gold, and having a second color tone on your Crow will help when you need just a little bit more light intensity inside the cab than what is offered from a red light. For my needs, I ended up with the USB ports at the back, closer to the B-pillar, and the two lights up at the front, closer to the windshield. Once you have your layout figured out, begin tightening down all of these accessories with the hardware that's been provided. This is where that 7mm socket and the 2.5mm Allen key will come in handy. With everything in place and tightened up, flip the Crow over and then try to raise it off the table a little bit to prevent rubbing the buttons of those Baja Design lights. From here, grab your wire stripper and prep the wires for the harness provided by Epic. In my case, I will be wiring the two Baja Design lights together, then to the pigtail harness under the glove box that has constant power. Then, the USB I will be wiring to the ignition-only power pigtail. I like to use a razor blade to cut my harness. It doesn't take a lot of pressure with a brand new blade, and in good light you can ensure that you don't cut the jackets of the wires inside. I'm using the red for the Baja Designs lights because the constant power pigtail, which is a mouthful, is red and white, and the yellow for the USB port because, well, I have no other option. And as you know, black is ground. Now that all of the wires are stripped and crimped, it's time to apply heat. Again, I would typically use a heat gun here, but my dad still has mine in his garage, so we're using a butane torch. After everything is heated and shrunk, tidy up your newly made custom harness with that automotive insulator tape. Next, let's grab zip ties and begin to run the harness towards the front of the Jeep. Epic shows the harness going rearward in their instructions. Personally, I have an aversion to that seatbelt trim piece and have opted to run forward since it's a shorter distance. But you do you. Run the newly created harness in the direction that matches where you plan to run the power for your needs. Now we get to play with our new favorite tool, the zip tie tool. And let me know in the comments if you ended up ordering one from this video. I feel like a bunch of you will. At this stage, you'll want to take care of your crying baby and make sure not to use her as a prop in your video. That's just unsportsmanlike. And people don't want to hear a crying baby. I mean, come on, Justin. It is now time to prep the Jeep for install. Begin by removing the 3 T25 bolts from the inner side of the soundbar trim piece. Notice me using my $26 Milwaukee tool that I got on Amazon. Don't worry, you can get one too. It is linked in the description of this video for you. And I'm serious, it was $26. This next step is up to you, really. You can remove this trim piece completely or pull it down just enough so that the front half exposes those bolts that are connected to the hardtop clamps. Personally, I went for it. And I did it because it's just clips. To remove it, just get a good grip and then pull down until all of the clips are free. You can see that one of the clips fought me, but we eventually got that trim piece to clear. To prevent damage to the dome light harness, remove it by sliding the white clip out and then grab a metal trim tool and pry the connector apart. That's the easiest way to do it, prevents you from having to yank on the thing a whole bunch. just use a trim tool. The last clip that gave me grief is still in the roll cage, so I'm going to extract it with my needle nose pliers and then use a big flat head screwdriver to repair the teeth on it before replacing it on my dome light. The front windshield cowl is even easier to remove. With just a few coordinated tugs, it will be free. The thing to watch out for, though, are the visors, as they will limit how far down you can pull down this cowl. Time to start removing bolts. Grab your 3/8 drive ratchet and the T40 and break loose the bolts that are holding the hardtop clamp plates. Once those are loose, you can grab a power tool and get them out the easy way. Now to figure out where we will be drilling, we will lightly place the crow into place. To position it correctly, angle it upward towards the front and then place it on the windshield trim right in front of the gasket. The rear 4 holes will line up with the bolts that you just removed. Lightly place the outer 2 bolts back into the roll cage to hold the crow in place. Slowly tighten up those 2 rear bolts until they are completely snug and the crow is aligned to this notch in the trim. You can now mark where you plan to drill. I used my 1/8 inch drill bit in this video because I assume most will have this. A step bit would likely be easier if you have that, but they are more expensive. So here, I started the holes with my 1/8 inch drill bit before pulling the crow off and then finishing up the holes with a 1/4 inch drill bit. Once the holes are drilled and Jeep shards are scattered across your entire interior, grab your best vacuum and put it to work. Remember to get the seats, the cup holders, and the footwells. Okay, let's take a quick break from the install to test one of Epic's claims that this has more headroom than any other overhead MOLLE rack. I'm placing my JCR rack in place and will measure to the center of the center console armrest. Raising up, we can see that the JCR has 25¼ inches of clearance from that position on the armrest. We'll want to remember that number after the crow is in, so, well, let's get that crow in for final fitment. Just like before, angle it from the front, rest it on the trim of the windshield, and then it's basically in place. This time, however, we can add back the hardtop clamp plates. These are labeled left and right and will sit in front of the crow with the crow against the paint of the roll cage. Now, grab your 4mm Allen key and the 10mm box wrench with the provided 3/4 inch, 1/4-20 button head bolt and flange nut. Tighten down the front of the crow all the way. Just get that sucker wrenched right down. Once tightened to 100%, return the T4 bolts to the roll cage and tighten them down, securing the crow and the hardtop clamp plates. Tighten these all the way down. Just snug them right down. Now, for science, I went back and grabbed my tape measure again to see if, indeed, the crow has more headroom than the JCR, and wouldn't you know it, it measures at 25¾ inches, giving an extra 1/2 inch of headroom over the JCR. Now, to the wire chase. With your front cowl already lowered, you need to make a little bit more room for that wire by removing the passenger visor. This is held in place with 2 T25 Torx bolts, so pull those out. I left the screws in mine. Do not do that, because, as you will hear, when you remove the A-pillar trim, it will knock one of the screws out and send it flying. Just take the screws all the way out and learn from my lesson. Next, remove the hardware securing the A-pillar grab handle. I have the CMM ball mount, so I am taking that out first. But you will have 2 10mm bolts, one in the top of the handle and one in the bottom. Remove those. Now, before you give that handle a big yank, grab your new trim tools that you got from my links on my blog post and remove the speaker cover. With that out of the way, you can now just yank on that handle. And that is the sound of a screw getting tossed under my passenger seat. Again, just remove them completely from that visor. You will save yourself a lot of time hunting for a screw. The last trim piece to remove is the triangular one closest to the door. Again, that new trim removal kit you just bought from my link will come in handy here. There are definitely some tools you're going to be picking up, I promise. The path is now cleared to run the harness. Do so by running the wire alongside the factory harness in the cowl and then chase it down the A-pillar, behind a small piece of trim at the top of the dash, and then finally into the footwell. As you go, you can zip tie this run to the existing factory harness to ensure that it won't interfere with any of the trim pieces when you have to put them back. Oh, and look, it's that zip tie tool again. Moving to the footwell, locate your pigtails. I have my red arc connected to the pink and orange pigtail already, so yours will likely look a little bit different than mine. I mean, it definitely will, not likely. But the colors, they should match. Finish routing the cable into the footwell above the plastic trim, and then remove the trim and door connector. This is how you will access the ground connection that, well, you need to have power work. Completes a circuit, man. This is a moment of truth. Cut your wire to length so that it meets up nicely with that ground point. The black ground wire will be your longest wire of the 3. I like to give myself an extra 2 or so inches just in case I need that extra slack. Using the razor blade trick, remove the black insulation. This is the hardest part of the entire installation, and it is only difficult because of the contortionist position that you will need to be in to work with all these wires under the glove box. But just like we did on the workbench, strip the wires, add the ring terminal to the black wire, and then butt connect the red, that is connected to the Baja Designs lights, to the red and white, and then the yellow, that's connected to the USB, butt connect it to the pink and orange. Filming in this tiny spot was nearly impossible. The process is identical to what we did on the workbench though. So ensure that you have good light to see which cables in the pigtail you are connecting to. You would hate to have to redo any of this and lose some of the length on your cable. And once done, grab that loom tape and tidy everything up. Reassemble the door trim to gain better access to the footwell, and then zip tie that harness to this cross member that is in the depths of the footwell. This one was a little tight for me to get our new favorite zip tie tool into, and I didn't want to over tighten these, so I used these small red clippers to get a flush cut. Now, clamber into the driver's seat and see if you did everything right. And if you did, it will look like this. Now, we still have one more test to do before giving my final thoughts. Does the Crow truly stay cooler than something like the JCR? To test it, I went for a drive with the top off and then placed the JCR alongside the Crow and left them both outside for over an hour. When I came back, the JCR measured at 95 degrees Fahrenheit and the Crow at only 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was even closer to the sun by like 2 inches. I guess I'm forced to agree that the Crow does stay cooler and has more headroom. Well done, Epic. You were right. You did, in fact, make a better overhead molly rack than the one that I ordered. I will be keeping the Crow. All right, so that install should take about 2 hours. I have a newborn baby. I was filming all of it, trying to be as thorough as I could. Took me about 3 days. It was a lot, but that was with extensive breaks and all that fun stuff that comes with being a new dad. I really think that as far as the comparison between this and the JCR, this is the better rack. It's a little bit more expensive if you just go bare rack to bare rack. It's definitely more expensive if you add the lights like I have, and then the pouches, which were sent to me, and I haven't decided how I want them, if I want them on here yet. So basically what happens is there's like a ladder system. It's very Apple of them, like maybe 16 gigs isn't enough. I'll spring for the 32, right? So it's like, yeah, bare rack's good, but I do want those lights. Ooh, now that I got the lights, maybe I do want the pouches. So do what you will with that. Personally, I think the rack, the lights, that's plenty for how I plan to outfit this, because I still have Red Arc. I've got my ham radio. I've got some other things I want to use this rack for. And yeah, so in closing, this was sent to me. However, I did buy the JCR fully intending to install that before this was sent. I tried to tell these guys don't send it. I even was selling the Jeep for a while, so that was like, hey, don't send it. And they talked me into it. And then they sent a bullet list for me to talk about when I make my video. What do you guys think? I'm curious. Go ahead and leave me a comment. If you do want this and you want more detailed instructions, I do have a link to my blog post where you can buy this. You can read through exactly what I've done in a little more detail, or just, without having to rewind a video 35 times to see one part. I've grabbed some screen grabs out of the video there. So, all right, that does it for me. If you liked the video, please like the video. If you have a question, leave me a comment. And if you want to hang out again, well, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, I'm Justin B. McBride.